Enron was America's seventh largest company, and when the truth finally came out, it took barely a month to become worthless. At its peak, the stock traded near $90 a share. Fortune magazine named it the most innovative company in America, 6 years in a row. Its executives were treated like visionaries, the very future of business. Then, in the fall of 2001, Enron filed the largest corporate bankruptcy the nation had ever seen. More than 20,000 employees. Retirement savings wiped out. Roughly $60 billion in shareholder value, gone. Most people remember the collapse. Almost nobody remembers the trial. And the real story of Enron was never really about accounting. It was about what brilliant men will tell themselves to keep from admitting they were wrong. Enron started as a boring business, natural gas pipelines in Texas. Then Jeffrey Skilling arrived. Skilling was a Harvard MBA, a former McKinsey consultant, a man whose confidence was legendary even in a company full of confident people. He had an idea that would remake everything. Enron would not just move gas through pipes. It would trade energy the way Wall Street traded stocks, buying and selling contracts, making markets, taking a cut of the flow. To make that vision look real on paper, Skilling wanted a new way to keep the books. It was called mark-to-market accounting. And it is where this story truly begins. Here is the idea in plain terms. Say Enron signs a 20-year deal to deliver energy. Under normal accounting, you record the money as it actually comes in, year by year, as it's earned. Under mark-to-market, you estimate what that entire deal will earn over 2 decades, and you book the profit today. All of it. Up front. Based on a projection you made yourself. Enron got regulators to approve the method for its trading arm, then pushed it further and further into every corner of the business. The company was essentially allowed to decide what its own future was worth, and then report that guess as this year's earnings. If the real profits never arrived, it didn't matter. The books had already spent them. This is the quiet danger hiding in every optimistic forecast. A number you badly want to be true slowly starts to feel like a number that is true. And once you've announced it to the world, admitting it was only ever a guess feels like confessing to a lie, so you don't. You reach for the next projection instead. To keep the story going, Enron had to hide a growing mountain of debt. That job fell to the chief financial officer, Andrew Fastow. Fastow built a maze of off-the-books partnerships with strange names, LJM, Chuco, the Raptors. On paper they were independent companies doing business with Enron. In reality, Fastow controlled them, and he used them to shovel Enron's losses and debt off of Enron's balance sheet, so the company always looked healthier than it was. Fastow later admitted, under oath, that he personally pocketed tens of millions of dollars from those partnerships, money that came, in effect, out of the company he was sworn to protect. And he testified that this was not some rogue operation hidden from the bosses. He said the men at the top knew. He said it was the plan. But in the summer of 2001, someone inside the building started doing the math, and what she found did not add up. Her name was Sherron Watkins, a vice president in the finance division. In August of 2001, she wrote a now famous memo to Kenneth, Enron's founder and chairman. One line would follow her for the rest of her life. "I am incredibly nervous," she wrote, "that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandals. She was not going public, not yet. She was an insider, warning her own boss, trying to save the company from within. She laid out the partnerships. She said the accounting looked like an elaborate house of cards. And she warned that if it ever came apart, the years of praise would count for nothing. She was not the only one asking questions. Months earlier, a Fortune reporter named Bethany McLean had published a simple, dangerous article titled, "Is Enron Overpriced?" In it, she pointed out that nobody could quite explain how the company actually made its money. On a conference call around that time, when an analyst pressed Skilling for basic numbers, Skilling insulted him on the line, in front of everyone. That was the culture. Doubt was treated as stupidity. Questions were treated as attacks. Then, in August 2001, Jeffrey Skilling suddenly resigned as chief executive, after only 6 months in the top job. He said the reasons were personal. He said it had nothing to do with the health of the company. Kenneth Lay stepped back in and reassured employees that Enron was in the strongest shape of its life. Weeks later, Enron admitted a $600 million loss and erased more than $1 billion of its own shareholder equity, quietly conceding that the secret partnerships had been holding the numbers up. The SEC opened an investigation. Credit agencies downgraded the debt. And then the thing every house of cards fears most finally arrived. Everyone tried to get their money out at the same time. Skilling would later call it a run on the bank. For years his defense was exactly that. Enron, he insisted, was a fundamentally sound company destroyed by panic and short sellers, not by fraud. But the panic had a cause. As the stock fell, the hidden partnerships that were secretly propped up by Enron's own share price began to collapse, and all the debt they had been concealing came flooding back onto the books. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. For the ordinary employees, the cruelty was in the timing. Many had their retirement savings locked into Enron stock during the worst of the fall, frozen, unable to sell, while executives above them had already cashed out millions. The people who understood the machine got out early. The people who trusted it rode it all the way down. One senior executive, tangled in the scandal, would later take his own life. And there was one more casualty most people forget. Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, one of the largest and most respected in the world, was caught shredding Enron-related documents as the investigation closed in. The firm was convicted of obstruction of justice. Years later, the Supreme Court would overturn that conviction on a technicality, but by then it was far too late. Arthur Andersen was already gone, and tens of thousands of its own employees, most of whom had nothing to do with Enron, had lost their jobs too. By the time the case finally reached a Houston courtroom, the whole country had already made up its mind. The trial felt like a formality, except for one strange, stubborn fact. The men on trial still did not believe they had done anything wrong. In 2006, Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay went on trial together. The charges included conspiracy, securities fraud, and making false statements to investors and auditors. Prosecutors put Andrew Fastow, the architect of the partnerships, on the witness stand, and he told the jury the fraud reached the very top. Skilling then did something rare for a defendant. He took the stand in his own defense, for days, a measure of just how certain he was. He insisted the accounting was legal, the partnerships had been disclosed, and that he had believed in Enron until the very end. Lay was defiant too, blaming the media, the short sellers, a conspiracy against a great American company. Neither man would concede the one point the jury had been assembled to decide. On May 25, 2006, the jury came back. Kenneth Lay, guilty on all 6 counts against him. Jeffrey Skilling, guilty on 19 counts of conspiracy, fraud, and lying to investors. The smartest guys in the room had lost. Kenneth Lay never served a single day. 6 weeks after the verdict, on vacation in Colorado, he died of a heart attack. And because he died before he could appeal, the court did something that feels almost impossible: it wiped his conviction from the record entirely. In the eyes of the law, Kenneth Lay died an innocent man. Jeffrey Skilling was sentenced to 24 years, one of the harshest white-collar sentences in American history. Later, an appeals court trimmed it after the Supreme Court narrowed one of the legal theories used to convict him. He served roughly 12 years and walked out of federal prison in 2019. Andrew Fastow, the man who built the machinery of the fraud, cooperated with prosecutors, and served about 6. In the years after, Enron became a punchline, shorthand for corporate greed, a name you could say to get a knowing laugh. And that is how a crowd protects itself. It turns a complicated failure into a simple villain, so it never has to ask the harder question: how did so many smart, careful, well-paid people look at the same numbers and see nothing wrong? And here is the part the punchlines about Enron always miss. These were not stupid men. They were among the most gifted executives of their entire generation. That was the trap. Their brilliance did not protect them from self-deception, it made them far better at it. They were smart enough to build a story so airtight, so internally consistent, that they came to believe it themselves, right up until the morning it fell apart beneath them. To the very end, Skilling insisted he had committed no crime, that Enron was a great company killed by fear. Maybe some part of him still believes it. And that may be the most human thing in this entire case. The hardest fraud to see through is the one you are telling yourself. So ask yourself this: if you were that certain, that celebrated, that convinced you were the smartest person in the room, would you have spotted the lie? Or would you have called it a strategy, and defended it, right up until the day it all came down? Follow for more.